poorest 200 million people and elevate them at least to the level of poverty and subsistence. And so we've been involving students in this task force, which actually brings students from now 60 different countries together in kind of action teams that act on projects in Africa, Middle East, etc. But what we do is also, and this is at the heart what we also do, and which is really what we've become known for, is that we take students, these students, all of this discipline, and we take them out, as I was saying, and into these kinds of places that we might not know, and we make them part of the community. We do this through a two-year commitment. You start school, and you prepare for this experience. We send a pilot group out there. The pilot group gets to know the community, and begins a conversation. The conversation returns to the university. We formulate a response based on this, what we call programming and architecture, this idea that we figure out what is at issue. We come up with a response that we then come back and present to the community. Once we have all agreed that this is the appropriate response, then we go down to the community and we spend anywhere from 2 months to 5 months working with the community. And some projects take multiple years. And out of that kind of, and then we come back 1 to 2 years later and we do a post-occupancy study to see, did we do what the hell we said we were going to do in the first place. This is the very beginning. We start with very craft-oriented communities in Mexico in the 80s, building extraordinary work here with Carlos Mijares, just learning how we could help these communities that built in brick in central Mexico build structures which didn't integrate concrete, which was expensive for them, environmentally unsound, but also limited the possibilities of what they could do. They could make millions of beautiful handmade bricks, but they couldn't figure out how to get all the projects they needed, schools and clinics and everything done. They had to pay the international price for concrete. And that involved us, as a part of research, in a project of going down to Oaxaca. And for 2 years, we learned how to make vaults. And generations of students went down there and learned how to make vaults. We came back and really thought the vault into this kind of tradition, this Corbo vault. It has basis in Middle Eastern vault making, but actually allowed us to neither use wooden forms or concrete as a kind of structural system. So in a way, what we're trying to do is a kind of response to the kind of havoc and misunderstanding that happens in the developing world as to first world technologies, where you introduce something like electricity here, 2 shots of Istanbul, the electrical system in Istanbul, where you don't quite understand the technology, but you need it, you become dependent on it, and it transforms both your way of life, the things you care about, and the meaning of things. And in its place, we begin to introduce technologies which are locally based and architectural and economic models which are locally based, which allow people to adopt these solutions and figure out how to make them from local resources and how to finance them, which is increasingly a problem for us. So we not only create the solution, but we try to create with the community a mechanism of delivery which allows them to replicate it. And here, very early on, we're working in India. We learned how to make solar condensers with the French at a massive scale. So in a way, coming back to pedagogic, we see every site, at the moment that the construction begins to happen, we see every site as a site of learning, as a place of exchange where you as students or young professionals and architects and students who all come together, learn, exchange, and collaborate with the community and exchange ideas which will fundamentally change each of you, but will establish the basis for what will happen on site. And every one of these processes is not only about the act of building, but it's about the participatory process of exchange that happens between you and the community. In other words, there's a kind of dialogue and discourse that is established between the students, the community, that takes on certain qualities, certain forms, because maybe they don't understand drawings, or maybe it needs to enact cultural activities that are important to the community. And this is true not only in the developing world, but in recent work, I'll show you later, in Katrina, in New Orleans, etc., in the South, that's been very important as well. And with American Indian Housing, another one of our projects. So here we're standing around a community, indigenous community in the highlands of Mexico, doing a project for this clinic for disabled children, and working with the head of the community, which is the guy in the white t-shirt. This is the 5th model we've made to show how this building is going to expand beyond what they asked, which was just a simple clinic, but now include a garden for disabilities, so all the disabled people of the community will be participating. And so this kind of transparency, this effort to make knowledge no longer the exclusive realm of the university, but actually the realm of everybody, it means that you begin to have your classes, your discussions here in the steps. We're building a building, and across the street, I'm holding a seminar on structures, trying to figure out why the damn beam failed. And we hold in steps, and the local builder comes by and gives his knowledge, it gives his input, etc. And often things emerge as this kind of this public discourse. And then we have this open source that's shared among all our clients. We've had 95 distinct projects, about 36,000 different structures built through the process in the last 24 years. And everybody within the network then shares knowledge and begins to create a combined body of understanding. And it all gets resolved in the real world, because our end product is actually to create a built artifact or a change in the condition of people that is palpable and leads to change. And so here, for instance, early project, a clinic, you always want your model projects that you're going to try to get people to think differently, to be transformational. Here, we were trying to get a clinic built in the squatter community. It was up to 1 million already. No space for the clinic. They say, well, the only space we have is the dump. So 4 meters of baby diapers, supposedly disposable baby diapers, etc. And so my students actually, the building is quite beautiful, but I love this shot best, which is the garden. So my students decided we're going to dig out the whole damn thing and process the whole thing, and then make what was the dump into a Garden of Eden. Because in every squatter community, the one thing that it doesn't exist is public space. And so because you can't squat public space. It's the only place that can't be created by social activism. So in this heart of this garden, there's a biodigester, there's native plants that have been brought in. It's an entire block of gardens, which is now, it's open to the community, and people come in there to find peace, and they sit there and rest while they wait for their clinical appointments. And their projects are involved. We started out building for 10-year schools in the squatter communities of Mexico City. It evolved into clinics because the women said, okay, health is also an issue. So the women group we were working with had a gaining conscience which transformed us and transformed our understanding of the problem. And as we began to create this ongoing dialogue, and one day in a conversation with my children who had joined me in the squatter community, they were telling them about the children's library. There's a children's library. I've never heard of a children's library. So my children took on a book collection, collected 7,000 books in Seattle, and we created a children's library, which was an unconventional project, but which the women have adopted and now have built 11 of these children's libraries throughout the squatter community of NETSA. And every year we invite a different artist. This year, Jim Garrett, who did a lot of metal work in modern art, and others, and Bill Gates' house, came down and donated 3 months to create this extraordinary offset hinge doors and extraordinary things. So, and transformed the library from being this enclosed, controlled sanctum to being a reading garden, which had indoor and outdoor spaces. One of our most successful initiatives have been a series of solar kitchens. So we have this ongoing dialogue. And the dialogue is almost always with women. I'm sorry, guys. The fact of the developing world is that women are taking action in unprecedented numbers. And I would say over 95% of all the people we have worked with in all the years are women's groups, highly organized, highly motivated, and transforming their practices in ways that in ways that they see necessary, both as mothers, women, as transformational agents in their community, realizing that the world cannot continue